Japan is one of the most studied, celebrated, and documented societies on Earth. Its history has been written, filmed, analyzed, and debated in thousands of languages. Most people who know anything about Japan believe they understand where its people came from. They are wrong, or at least, they are only partly right. Before the Japanese existed as we know them today, the islands were home to a completely different people, a people who had been there for over 14,000 years, who developed one of the oldest pottery traditions in all of human history, whose DNA is unlike almost any other population on Earth, whose Y chromosome haplogroup, a genetic marker passed from father to son, is found almost nowhere else in the world. They are called the Ainu today. Fewer than 20,000 people claim Ainu ancestry. Most of them live in Hokkaido, the northernmost of Japan's main islands. For most of their recorded history, they were treated by the Japanese state as a problem to be solved, a primitive remnant to be assimilated, a people without history worth preserving. Modern DNA science has revealed something that changes everything. The Ainu are not a footnote in Japanese history, they are its foundation. The story of how they were nearly erased and what their survival means for our understanding of how Japan was actually built. It is one of the most important untold stories in all of East Asian history. The Jomon period of the Japanese archipelago is one of the longest continuous cultural traditions in human history. Beginning approximately 14,500 years ago and lasting until around 300 BCE, the Jomon people inhabited every major island, from Kyushu in the south to Hokkaido in the north. They lived for an unbroken span of time that dwarfs most civilizations. The Jomon were hunter-gatherers, but calling them that understates their sophistication. They produced ceramic pottery, among the earliest in the world. This pottery predated the Middle East by thousands of years. They built permanent semi-subterranean pit dwellings and created elaborate ritual objects. These include distinctive clay figurines called dogu, whose purpose remains debated but whose craftsmanship is undeniable. They managed forest resources, cultivated certain plants, and maintained complex trade networks across the archipelago. Genetically, the Jomon were highly distinctive. Whole genome analyses of Jomon skeletal remains have confirmed they were highly differentiated from other East Asian populations. They formed what geneticists describe as a basal lineage, associated with ancient coastal migrations that separated from the main East Asian population very early. The Ainu are the closest living descendants of the Jomon day. Their genome carries more Jomon ancestry than any other modern population. The specific genetic markers they carry, particularly the Y chromosome haplogroup, D1b, are the direct inheritance of those ancient hunter-gatherers. Approximately 2,300 years ago, something happened that changed the Japanese archipelago forever. Rice farming migrants from the Korean peninsula began arriving. These were the Yayoi people, bringing agriculture and a new way of organizing society. Agriculture produces surplus, surplus produces hierarchy, hierarchy produces states. The Yayoi transformation was not merely a change in diet, it was the beginning of the political and social structures that would eventually produce the Japanese state and the imperial system. The Jomon did not disappear overnight. They mixed with the incoming Yayoi population, which is why modern Japanese carry 10 to 20% Jomon ancestry. This was confirmed by a landmark 2024 analysis of over 10,000 modern Japanese individuals. Yayoi genetics are dominant in central Honshu, particularly around Osaka and Kyoto. Jomon genetics are stronger in the northeast and Kyushu, and most strongly of all, in Hokkaido, where the Ainu maintained the most direct line of Jomon descent. But as the Yayoi-arrived state expanded, the Jomon-descended populations of the north found themselves increasingly marginalized. The people who would become the Ainu retreated to Hokkaido, where the climate was less suitable for rice agriculture. For centuries, the expanding Japanese state could not easily reach them, preserving a unique genetic and cultural legacy. Before the sustained Japanese expansion into Hokkaido that began in the 17th century, the Ainu inhabited a world that stretched from Hokkaido north through Sakhalin. This was a vast maritime and forest environment, and the Ainu were masters of it. Their economy was built around the salmon. The rivers of Hokkaido run with salmon during the autumn runs. The Ainu developed sophisticated techniques for catching, processing, and preserving this resource on a scale that sustained large communities through long northern winters. They hunted deer and bear, the latter of which held a central place in their spiritual life through the Amante ceremony, a ritual in which a young bear raised in the community was ceremonially sent back to the spirit world as a divine messenger. The Ainu language is a language isolate. It is not related to Japanese, to Korean, or to any language family linguists have firmly connected it to. It stands alone, as genetically isolated in the linguistic world as the Ainu themselves are in the genetic world. Their oral literature, epic poems called yuka, sung from memory, preserved a vast body of history and cultural knowledge without a written script. This was a complete, sophisticated, ecologically adapted civilization that had been developing in its particular environment for thousands of years. What happened to it next is one of the most difficult chapters in East Asian history. The sustained Japanese expansion into Hokkaido, then called Ezo, accelerated dramatically in the 19th century. As the Meiji Restoration transformed Japan into a modern state, the government decided Hokkaido would be colonized and its population assimilated. The former Aborigines Protection Act of 1899 formalized this policy. It prohibited the Ainu from practicing their traditional customs. It forbade the use of the Ainu language and forced sedentarization on communities that had been seasonally mobile. Traditional hunting and fishing rights, the foundation of the Ainu economy, were eliminated. Children were removed from their communities and placed in schools where they were punished for speaking their language. The consequences were catastrophic. The Ainu population collapsed further under the weight of these policies. The language, once spoken across a vast geographic range, contracted to a handful of elderly speakers. The ritual practices, the oral literature, the material culture, all were systematically suppressed over the course of several generations. Japan did not formally recognize the Ainu as an indigenous people until 2019, 120 years after the law designed to erase them was passed. The last decade of ancient DNA research has done something remarkable. It has made the erasure of the Ainu impossible. Every genome-wide study of Japanese population history confirms the same picture. The Jomon were a genetically distinct population with deep roots in the Japanese archipelago. The Ainu are their closest living descendants. The modern Japanese people are a mixture of Jomon and Yayoi ancestry. The Jomon component ranges from roughly 10 to 30% depending on region, and the Ainu carry the highest concentration of that ancient heritage. This means something profound. The Ainu are not outsiders to Japanese history. They are not a marginal population on the fringes of the Japanese story. They are the living connection to the people who built the foundations of everything that came after, who inhabited those islands for 14,000 years. They developed the world's earliest pottery, shaping the ecology and landscape of the archipelago before the first Yayoi farmer arrived. The Y chromosome haplogroup D1b that most Ainu men carry is found elsewhere only in Tibet and the remote Andaman Islands. It is a genetic signature so ancient it speaks to migrations that happened tens of thousands of years ago. It is written in the DNA. There are today growing efforts within the Ainu community to reclaim what was taken. Language revitalization programs, cultural centers, legal recognition of land rights. A new generation of young Ainu people are choosing to identify openly with an identity that their grandparents were punished for claiming. The story is not over. It has barely begun again. 14,000 years of continuous presence. A genetic signature found almost nowhere else. A language that stands alone in the world with no known relatives. A civilization that developed in isolation on the northern islands. The Ainu were never what official history wanted them to be, a primitive people without a meaningful past. They were the original people. Modern DNA science has made that truth impossible to erase, no matter what any government law once tried to accomplish. Subscribe to Hidden Origins because every people has a story that history forgot. And some of those stories are only now being fully told. Drop a comment below. Did you know Japan had an indigenous people before the Japanese as we know them? We want to hear your reaction.